This is not part of the Phantom Pain. This is standalone prologue.
I mean, it has the advantage of not trying to adapt a card game that already exists into a digital form, right? It's existing purely as a digital card game.
Hearthstone!
So, gentlemen, the last time we spoke about Ground Zeroes, we had Damiani in the room. He sang us a song. And the conclusion mostly was that Ground Zeroes would ultimately be a glorified demo. Has that happened?
No.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. I'm glad we have so many
Wow.
varying opinions.
It has.
Blair, you should start then. Why is it a glorified demo?
Because honestly, the first mistake I think they made was having it hit credits after you finish the first mission.
Your favorite song.
That I guarantee you turned off a lot of people that were on the fence but still bought it. You know, you play it for, and I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's only 2 hours or whatever. I actually finished it in 1.
Yeah, me too. 72 minutes was my first play.
I was around 66.
Yeah.
And I explored, I did, you know, walked around the grounds, killed a lot of people, tried out the new mechanics, but I was convinced that most people said 2 hours, it would take me at least 3, because I usually take my time with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished it in 66
Yeah.
or so.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't bother me quite so much because there are lots of other missions that you can try. They change the environment. You can go back in. You can do more things. Perfectly fine. But when you hit credits and you're sitting there for almost as long as you were sitting through cutscenes, that's kind of a problem. That put a sour taste in my mouth. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep playing it for the next year, and I'm going to love it. But my mistake was going back in and playing the other missions after the credits. The other missions just feel like more Peace Walker, just HD.
Yeah,
Which is fine.
The other missions they're non-canon. They don't exist within the world of Metal Gear Solid, so something's already taken
Well,
out
they do.
from them, you know?
They do to a certain extent because you get the VO from Commander Miller, I think it is.
Right.
Or just Miller. And he kind of outlines why this mission was sort of important, and he names characters that are probably going to be referenced again. And
Yeah,
you're taking,
that sniper team, come on, that's some awesome lore right there. The hand and the finger or whatever, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and you know, you're essentially taking on clients to kill people, to get tapes, to kind of further the story along. It seems a little richer than the mini missions in Peace Walker did. It feels like those could possibly be connected, but at the end of the day, probably not. They probably just had to try to get as much content out of this thing as they could to justify us paying for it.
What bugs me about the demo comment is that a demo is part of a game that's going to be released. This is not part of the Phantom Pain. This is Ground Zeroes. This will not be played in the Phantom Pain. When you get a demo, it's like, okay, I'm going to play the first 10 minutes of this game, and then I'm going to come back to it when the full game is released and play that same 10 minutes again, because it's just a little chunk of it and it's a demo. It's like, no, this is standalone prologue. You have the Ground Zeroes mission, you have all the other side missions. I know a lot of people are like, oh, the side missions, you know, it's like Peace Walker, but they're still fun to go through at least once or twice on normal and hard. And then there's all the unlockables, which I'm going to get into later.
You're gonna get skins.
Skins?
Yeah, I just got the PS1 Snake last night. I unlocked that
Oh,
skin.
well, I don't have the luxury of that mission being unlocked.
So we should talk about that. Huber, you're steamed today. You walked in steamed.
Yeah, I'm a little on edge.
Irked.
Yeah. So last night, because the plan was to have that unlocked for today so we could capture it and put it up on the site, the two, I'm not going to say exclusive.
They're exclusive.
The two console-specific missions, the unlockable for getting all the patches, cannot unlock Deja Vu.
The funnest side mission.
Yeah. Went through on hard. I was like, okay, maybe on hard, like I can, they reset. Patches aren't there. So I think I have to manually delete my save data at this point to do it. Now, is this a Kojima troll or is this a glitch?
It's not a troll.
What do you think this is?
No, I've played the mission. You can A person with a working save file can do it. And I think you had a rare bug, and I think it totally sucks, but...
So I guess I just got to start over.
Huber-specific bug, yep. One thing I really want to talk about Ground Zeroes, beyond this narrative of is it a demo, is it long enough, is its tone. I feel like with Ground Zeroes, with Metal Gear Solid 5, Metal Gear Solid has its tone back. And that's a weird thing to me. So I think that it kind of got lost. I think Metal Gear Solid used to be not quite always like serious, but always its own like thing. It was respected. And I think the series lost its respect around Metal Gear Solid 4 in this time where we had internet complainers, you know what I mean? And it is a game with like a monkey in a diaper.
And you had the fair weather fans that will jump in and be like, well, this is going to be the definitive one, so I'll finally play 4. Like, we have people in this office that work at GameTrailers whose first Metal Gear Solid game was 4.
Whoa, dude, that's so crazy. So yeah, so the way I feel about it is that like it's adaptive. It's strange for me for a series to hit 5 and still be relevant and not just go off this goofy end. Snake appears in Smash Bros. And it's really hard to get that character serious again, you know what I mean? Yeah. Different Snake, that was Solid Snake. But it does something to the brand, you know what I mean, when it gets dragged through all these weird things. And it's exciting to me to see the Metal Gear Solid brand brought back into like this like heavy spot again.
And it's cool because of the time period. You're going back. So that just has this weird nostalgia factor to it. You know, it's like playing through it, I was like, man, sure could go for some Octo camo right about now. I've had that feeling like numerous times.
You want your radar back,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
it is cool. Nice to be able to dip into the timeline at any point.
Exactly.
And actually feel comfortable. Like, it doesn't matter which Snake you're playing. It doesn't necessarily matter who's voicing him.
Yeah, actually.
Kiefer Sutherland did a fantastic job.
He caught me off guard. He's a pleasant surprise.
There are a few times definitely where it doesn't really feel that comfortable, and since we didn't have that much time within the game to get used to his voice, I do wish that it was a little longer just on that basis alone to get a little bit more used to Kiefer Sutherland. But you're right about the grittiness of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's dark.
Specifically the ending, and we can put spoiler tags on this or not, but the way that the Ground Zeroes mission ends was very unexpectedly gritty for me.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is.
It's like...
And Kojima's been preparing us this whole time.
If that's the tone that's being set to get us ready for 5.
The only catch is you go in solo. The politically sensitive nature of the mission means backup is not an option.
Fine. I like some alone time now and then.
One last thing I did want to talk about is, and it kind of ties into Kiefer, it ties in everything. I feel like Ground Zeroes is a buffer. I feel like Ground Zeroes exists to get us prepared for Phantom Pain, get us more familiar with Kiefer Sutherland, get us more familiar with all these new mechanics and everything. So when Phantom Pain comes out, we're hitting the ground running. We're ready to call helicopters. We're ready to listen to the guy from 24 be Snake. How do you feel about that?
All those things are the benefits that we can get from it, but you can't really ignore the fact that this was more likely put out because A, they couldn't get the game ready for this year, and B, they had this thing that they put together, this mission environment with all of the teaser material that maybe it either didn't fit into the game or it made the game too long or whatever. I mean, Kojima teased us saying that he needed to do rewrites of like part 1, part 2. He was teasing us about inconsistencies and all this stuff. Whether you believe him or not, that's completely up to you. But it would make sense to me that if he actually did do rewrites, regardless of how Phantom Pain turns out, Ground Zeroes didn't necessarily fit into it, but they still wanted to put it out there and get money off of it. They're like, hey, we've got this thing. It's a neatly put together package. Why not give our fans something early, something to look forward to? I don't think they put it out there necessarily to prepare us for anything, but it is an obvious benefit for us having it a year early and seeing what's to come. In the conversation earlier, one of the main questions we posed ourselves is when we pay for this and we play it and we look back on it at any given time, do we say that we wasted our money? Right. I certainly do not feel bad for spending $30. I would not have felt very bad for spending $40. Now, the comments I made earlier about feeling like it is kind of a demo, it is. I think it is, but I don't feel bad for having spent the money, and I'm going to continue playing it. I will play it again tonight. I will play it again this weekend. And after I get 20 hours out of this thing, I'm not going to feel the same way I did today
Yeah.
I'm going to be happy that I spent the money on it. I'm going to be happy that I have another game to play on my PS4, and it looks gorgeous, and it plays extremely well.
And it's just fun thinking about the possibilities of Phantom Pain. Like, now that you've played Ground Zeroes, it's like, I can't even imagine how crazy it's going to be. Like, the Ground Zeroes base is like, okay, go rescue these people right here. Whereas Phantom Pain, 200 times bigger, is going to be like, go rescue someone that's 30 minutes by horse that way. Here you go. Like,
And the sun is rising.
sun is rising, open-ended, just total
There's a
freedom.
whale made out of fire.
Oh my god. I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Just have fun! Hearthstone!
So I heard it's pronounced Hearthstone and not Hearthstone.
Hearth.
Yeah, even though when I look at it, I guess those were in the game. Wait, this made you replay and reinstall World of Warcraft.
I played,
which
yeah.
makes me dislike the game a little bit more.
Are you sure wasn't it not Final Fantasy XIV that made you reinstall World of Warcraft?
No, it definitely wasn't Final Fantasy XIV. I feel like I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV by proxy of living with Mike.
I'm glad it knows it's like uncynically knows that it's a computer program and it's fine with that.
I mean, it has the advantage of not trying to adapt a card game that already exists into a digital form, right? It's existing purely as a digital card game, and I think there's a lot of advantages to that. But you talk about magic. One of my favorite things about Hearthstone is it takes a lot of the micromanagement out of it, which at first sort of sounds like a negative, but I really like, you know, that you don't have to worry about land, right? You're not...
You can't get mana fucked.
You can't get mana fucked,
Yeah.
because the way mana is doled out is almost entirely automated. Like, you get one more mana each turn, and, you know, you can each card has a certain mana cost, so you're limited based on what turn you're on, essentially.
It's a weird kind of arms race, I feel like, because each player is kind of playing the same. They do some brilliant stuff like the coin. The second player gets that extra
Right.
bit of mana. That's
Right.
that's some cool stuff. But it's interesting because like later on in the game, you can actually play like your heavy hitters, or you can play a bunch of cards at once, which is something that's can be pretty rare in some other of these games that are resource driven.
Something that I really wanted to bring up about Hearthstone is, you know, you talked about this in your preview. It's very streamlined, right? Like a lot of Blizzard games, but it's almost like deceptively simple. Like the mage, right? Her class ability is if you spend 2 mana, you can do 1 damage to a minion or a player. And I just kind of initially, for some reason, I was like, okay, I'm just going to use it to do a little bit of extra damage in my turn if I have the extra resources. But as you go on and you watch other people, like I've probably been watching more Hearthstone on Twitch, learning things, than I have actually playing it. You can do this really cool thing where you spend the mana to damage a creature that has Enrage.
And then they get plus
and then they
3
get,
or
and you're
something.
like, just that little wrinkle. I feel like there's a lot more to the game than I initially thought there was.
But again, it is simple though. Like, have you dealt with you played as a mage? Have you dealt with secrets? It's the only time you can ever affect the other side's board on their turn. And
It's like trap cards, right?
There's not too many secrets though. Like if you're playing against the mage, there's like 3 possible secrets. I think a hunter only has a couple as well. So it leaves
A hunter has a
very
few of them.
A few. It leaves and those are actually called traps, right? There's very little kind of mystery, and I mean the simplicity is good because playing interrupts and stuff like that. That's the crazy stuff that's going on in those games, and like that's where things get complicated. And it's, you know, it's kind of balance things out. But it's funny, like the Enrage little trick. That's cute, but I felt like something like if you had played Magic, you remember the Tims. I forget what they were actually called. They were the blue 1/1s that tap to do 1 damage.
Okay.
Like that added so much more to a control deck that blue had. It was so much more of a threat. And I'm not saying that's completely absent here, but it's less of a real driving force than it was in a game
They totally
like
moved that to red though. You know, blue can't do stuff like that anymore.
Well, red always had the kind of direct damage, but there was always that kind of like threat on the table instead of threat in your hand sort of stuff.
The randomness and the luck of the draw, and I feel like, well, it's certainly present. They do a good job limiting it because you only have a 30-card deck, and the way that the cards are constructed in Hearthstone is you can have a maximum of 2 of any single card in a deck. And a lot of times, or at least the way I've been constructing my decks and the way I've been seeing other people construct their decks, is you usually want to have 2 of whatever card you have in your deck,
so you get
for the most part.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're almost always going to see every card in your deck if you go 10 rounds. So there isn't as much luck of the draw as I initially thought.
Watch your back. You asked for it.
I think the game's fun, and it certainly moves along, and the rules are there to kind of push it. It's nice that you get to, you get to play your big cards, and you don't have to worry about getting mana screwed. I did feel like sometimes when I'm playing it, though, that I had like very few decisions to make, depending on what turn it was and what I have in my hand. And you get to a point a lot of times where like, okay, I mean, I assume that I will draw a card next time. I have got plenty of mana, so whatever it is, I'll put it into play. And I kind of feel, it moves along quickly, but yeah, I wish, I'm not saying the game doesn't have depth, but to me, like really enjoying Magic, I really like the deck building and the coming up with non-obvious strategies and trying to make the best of like not a great situation. Whereas here, I think sometimes it's like, oh, okay, from how the cards are played, this is kind of the way it's going to go, and I can kind of, like see into the future of the match and just try to, I don't know.
So
it's okay.
I agree. I agree, and I disagree, because when I first started playing, the first few hours, I was playing a mage, and I was like, okay, this is how you play a mage. And the way I would play is, I would always put out minions whenever I could. I would always do damage with like damage cards, like do 6 damage to the other player as soon as I could. But instead of being mana screwed, which doesn't happen really in Hearthstone, the problem that you run into is it's very easy to run out of cards. Yeah, right. So you get to a point where it's like, okay, I laid out a bunch of stuff this turn, I'm all set, I'm gonna win, and then the other guy casts something where it's like do 2 damage to every creature on the board, and you're like, oh no, it would have been better for me to like test the waters, try to bait a card out of him and hold back, because this next turn I really don't have anything to cast, and he's just completely trumped me. Not playing a card is like, you're like, well, like, am I just gonna not put something down and the guy will, roll right over you? It's really easy to kill creatures that are annoying you. So you're gonna just be like, boing, where sometimes in Magic you get a guy down and you're like, hey, and the other person's like, what do I do about this card? And it's like, hey, sorry.
I only did it once, but it was fun doing the arena, which is basically a draft.
Right.
It's still a little weird with the whole rule systems. I understand 3 games and you're out, and it seems like an okay investment because you're guaranteed a pack, I guess, even if you win 0 games. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good way to add a little bit of variety. I do see myself playing the game in general when it goes full release. Mm-hmm. But I'm seeing it like some people handle their Spelunky addictions where they do the daily challenge. I may log in and like look if, the quests, where it's like, a lot of them have been like win 2 games or kill like 30 minions or something like that. And I feel like that's like a real like 30-minute investment or something like that. And maybe, like a functional junkie. Like I'll walk away from it. A talking junkie. A lot of Mr. Show references today.
Okay, I'm really like deck building and Magic, and I feel like there's certainly room to do that, and there are different strategies, there are different ways you can take a class in Hearthstone, but I also kind of feel like the combos and the angles are kind of like obvious, and sometimes you'll hear Magic players, if a set comes out and things look too aligned, they're like, why are you making my combos for me, I want to figure this stuff out. And I kind of feel like in Hearthstone there are a few tricks or, and angles, and they're baked in, and you're like, hey, if you want to go for this kind of approach with this class, you can go for, the thing that amplifies your spell damage, For example, you can go with cards of that, but it's kind of like, that's a thing, and if you want to do that, you'll obviously pick these cards. So I felt like, it's fun to play and pass a bit of time, but I don't know if I'll get back into it unless Ben could somehow convince me to give it a little more. Like I felt like I could see like, okay, I can see myself like grinding through, getting some more packs, replacing these obviously shitty cards.
It seems like
it
seems like the really fun, weird cards are the super rare ones, and I've seen them played pretty rarely. Like the ones that make the turns go faster, and like I guess there's one card that makes the deck, does deck milling, but like most of the battle cries or like death rattles, yeah, they're not the most.
Yeah. Well, I kind of felt like I can't make an interesting deck with these low level cards. There's no way to spin them. They're just kind of weak cards.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, the Magic comparison is a focal point of this talk, and I feel like it's a little bit unfair, right? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, they're different games.
Magic has been around for a long time and has
the Godfather.
has had a chance to redefine itself numerous times, and I feel like Hearthstone could certainly use more cards, and I do sort of agree with you. One of my problems with it is because it uses classes, people are like, this is the best class, use this class. And then you see everyone use that I do think it'll get more nuanced and have more stuff eventually, but right now, it's really good for what it is, and I can only see it getting better, you know, over the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, I mean, for them to, like, you know, Blizzard making a card game and for it to be, you know, good right out of the gate, I think that's, you know, that's certainly something.
Right.
Whether you like the, you know, the little wild bullshit quotes when you click on the dudes who are,
I like the interactive sets.
I've got the funny voice, you know, that shit. Oh, Ryan loves clicking on the fire.
It's great.
Yeah, starting that fire. Yeah.
You think there'll be a
The little
real money
interactions.
auction house? No. Did you ever get around to playing Card Fighter Clash on the Neo Geo Pocket Color?
I have played it a little bit, and that's a really good game. The Neo Geo, man. Pocket SNK.